Blessing Soul Family. It's Jules with the Becoming Bioquantum podcast, and I have our guest on. He has been in a couple, I believe, past episodes. So I will link those in the show notes. And if you want to go learn more about him, you can go back to those episodes because we're going to just dive right into the juicy stuff. I know you have a book that just released, so I want to start with that, and then we'll kind of go into the intricacies of where that conversation takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. So great to see you again, my dear friend. It's always a pleasure hanging out and just tossing that ether back and forth and enjoying what comes of it because that's the magic. Um, so the immortality crystallized within the material is a book on internal alchemy from a Taoist perspective, which gives you an A to Z on how things are created from creation to completion to rebirth. We go through the fundamentals, looking deep within the metaphysics of Tao. So this gives you a functional blueprint so that you can start crafting things and not be a consumer, but a creator of your reality.
Gosh, it's such a huge one because we're so programmed to consume and it's time to do, right? It's me from I actually say go from consuming to attuning to doing. So the attuning process is the guidance that comes from well, outside of our programming, if you will. So I want to talk a little bit about like, just what first of all inspired the book, and then let's go into some of the things that we'll learn there because you said a few things before we get on and I was like, that sounds very interesting. So I want to keep going
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. I mean, I've created a series. I basically are given a directive and a mandate from my teachers, and I just go straight into it. So, for someone that might be looking at, well, what does that mean? I'm having a dialogue with the monologue, which is myself.
Mm.
So, in crafting that, you create this symbiosis and a great relationship that people would refer to as, the spirit realm or other iterations of themselves. This is the thing that people don't understand. It's like when I'm communicating with their spirit or I'm communicating with my teachers, it's another version of myself that remembers that I am the monologue, I am the source. And so, immortality crystallized within the material is a fundamental guide from A to Z on internal alchemy. We refer to that as Nidan, which evokes the internal power, which is Nigong. And so you're able to understand the metaphysics of Tao so that you can craft your own blueprint for your own reality. And then I give you the working components and the method to the madness. And so there's two components within Lao Tzu's teaching that are in this particular book, and it starts with the rhapsody and then the remedy. So the rhapsody is that enveloped emanation of pure source through this dialogue that you have with the words that craft everything so eloquently and merge it into your body as a vehicle, a tuning fork, a tool to create reality. And then there's fundamental methods from the cycle where we look at creation or reality as the great bellows, where everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, shout out to Mission Impossible. I'm a Cruise fan, got some issues, but that's all right. That center point is where you want to find your true self. And we
Mm.
refer to that as the pulse. So when we're looking at Taoist metaphysics, it starts with the animation of all things, which is what we refer to as the primordial mother. And that animates the consciousness. The consciousness animates the spirit. We refer to it as the Shen. The Shen animates the energy. The energy animates the body. And so what happens with a lot of people, you get these ascended states of self-realization because for a Taoist to be self-realized is to remember that you are an eternal, immortal, forever self that is a constant. Now, that pulse, which is constant, that animates everything, is not impermanent, it is permanent. When you realize that, you can alter the material that we speak of, which you refer to as 3D, realm, dimension, however you want to put it. that's when you can make alterations that are permanent using that immortal self. And that can only be actualized by discovering that that crescendo, ascended, transcended state needs to be shown through an alchemical process. Because what happens is people do what we call the spiritual bypass, where
Mm.
they jump the line and they go, I'm Brahman, I'm conscious, cosmic consciousness, I'm the spirit, I'm the source of all things. And that's a great start. But what happens is it starts to diminish because you can't hold that charge. This
Mm.
avatar is a barometer, a tuning fork that must be met with a level of mastery and alchemization to actualize it so that you can, through this body, experience the energy, through the energy, experience the Shen, because the Shen, the spirit, is the puppet master to the energy. The energy is the puppet master to the body. The body, in essence, is also all encompassing. Anything in the material state is the body when I'm referring to that. So you're altering all these things. If you don't have a complete connection, realizing that you are the animation to all these things, the diminished return becomes more evident. So the body consists of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Anything of that notion is an emanated effect within energy. Now, energy, if not met with a realization of your spirit self, you play within what I call the spiritual baby shit, and you play back and forth. You're playing the doo-doo. You're going back and forth over and over again, back to the energy. I'm the energy. I'm the body. I'm the thoughts. I'm the feelings. And it becomes this interplay of delusion, and it's never met with a realization. So when people spiritually jump the line, they become awakened, and I'm awakened, I'm aware, I'm all things, I'm nothing, I've experienced the Brahman, the cosmic consciousness. This is great, but you haven't done the groundwork of the foundational stuff that's necessary for you to hold that. So what happens is everything that they emanate seems so powerful, but then it becomes a diminished return because it's not encapsulated within the foundation. You must find that true sense, root yourself into what we call the material, so that your avatar is now the ground zero for your spirit, your consciousness, and ultimately remembering you are all things, the animation to that, which is a permanence. And that's what we refer to as magnetic, magnificent, true self. And when that happens, you are permanent. That means that line runs from every ascended, descended state all the way down to the body. When realized, you have complete imperium, dominion, and ultimately maestro over every state of awareness. But it must be actualized, it must be activated, or the initiate plays with I'm the Brahmin, yet you don't have anything to ground it in to make it realize. Because, ladies and gentlemen, and ladies, you're playing in the spiritual baby shit. That's what it is. It's now. It's now. I mean, this is what everyone's doing there. If you want to experience this, we wouldn't be here in this material state. So you have to master that. And this is where I don't need the body. I'm on, I'm out, I'm everything. I can harness it at will. But what you'll find a trail of broken crumbs that particular person is starting to have more diminished return of their experience when they're Brahman, when they're consciousness, because they haven't actualized and burnt in that alchemical process that makes you connected between the earth and the universe. It makes it fundamentally impossible to alter the material. You cannot alter the material if you're not actualized. And people will see that. I see it over and over again. Oh, I'm a healer, I'm a channeler, I'm a light worker, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm something else. And I'm like, that is fantastic. Show me.
Mm.
Oh, well, there's one thing I started off as this all-knowing, incredible, conscious transmitter of healing, and I just transmit it to others, and they become transformed. And then what happens is they start, through their own admission, well, I'm losing this superpower, and I'm losing this, and then I can't do this. I used to be able to heal people, used to have insight, I can't, and they all start to diminish. The returns to diminish because you haven't created a container to hold that resonance. And this is where we get to what is the most valuable commodity within this material. That is your attention and intention. Attention and intention is actually your spirit taking a little peekaboo into the energy and the body, the material state, and you're able to harness that and create from that. You are a creator, but until otherwise noted, you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. You're a consumer. And so you consume between the energy and the body, making it almost implausible, impossible for you to create permanence because you're not actualized as Shen, as spirit. That attention intention will always fall short. The energy, which you realize, this is all variables. This is energy, your energy, I'm energy, all the things that we call material are energy that is diminished return that will ultimately fall back into itself. It's impermanent. Your true self, your eternal, immortal, forever, forever self is permanent, and it has complete maestro over everything from the body all the way up to its self-realization and knowing of animation of everything, the creation, completion, and rebirth. That is what we call the mother. That is everyone's true self. But are you in that human condition, the human being? We call it the labyrinth of what is the finite mind, the sort of bankrupt state of no return, because it only becomes activated when you merge yin and yang together. When you merge yin and yang together, you're a 100% consciousness. And from that, you can supercharge or super steroid overdose realization that the intellect is now powered by the intuitive state. So now when you are critical thinking or logically thinking or internally like introspective, it's supercharged with that intuitive state. It's become one. So now everything you do, thought, feeling, or emotion, you are the physical, energetic, and spiritual manifestation of divine word, will, light, love of the Tao. That last part just put in of the God, of the universe, of Buddha, of whatever, of self. That is where you get down with the get down. That is where real self mastery comes in, because then you can do what my dear friend Jules does, which is imbue things from that higher standpoint, that 40,000-foot drop, where you're looking down upon a macro and a micro, because the awakening and the awareness that you have is animation from a Taoist metaphysics perspective. You are the animation, and that's how you can actualize and activate these things within the material state. And you make your alterations at will. You're the spiritual dressmaker that creates whatever you choose to, and it cannot be realized if you are not able to activate. So within a Hindu or energetic potential, that system would be referred to as a chakra. Like, so the lower chakras are not activated, and everyone stays in the heart and the head, and they play with the spiritual baby shit, and things never become. It's just a contemplation, and I'm out there and I'm doing stuff and I'm all these things, and you have a trail of nonsensical nothing, and it's more crafted in your mind as opposed to altering material, which is what you do, my friend. You alter the material, and you are that monologue. We've had this conversation before. I love that about you. It's like, I know what I know, and I know who I am, and I know where I'm going, because I'm all things. And that you would refer to as something greater. You go straight into the DNA, and you're altering everything from that standpoint as self, as a known self. And that's so powerful. But many people don't understand the metaphysical steps from a Taoist perspective. When I lay them out, people get very excited because they have a sense of there's a progression and a method to the madness, rather than just going, I am the I am. Okay, that's something else. Maybe I'll stop with the diarrhea and you can interject anything you choose to at this point. It's like, hang on, San, I'm just going to go for a coffee break. I'll be back in about 40, and then I'll just wrap this up and close this out here.
Oh my gosh, but that was so great. I would say the reflection is just, if I were to take everything that you just said, is embodiment, and it's taking consciousness into the embodiment of the purity of source frequency, and a body embody ascension, because if it's not embodied, it's not actualized. And I believe that we're right on the cusp of that. And because we can't think our way there, and we can't consume our way there. And the more people that start to talk about it and then actually give the tools of how to do that, the more people are going to start going in that direction. I was kind of listening. I went to this coffee talk the other day. It was called Conscious Coffee Talk, and everyone was talking about what consciousness was and what their experience was. And I just sat there and I was like, let's have the experience of consciousness and then talk about what the experience was, right? Instead of just talking about what it is. And I think that's the shift that's starting to happen is that we're moving into a space of experience. Within that experience, we're learning how to embody it as a space of remembering or knowing versus trying to pick up on things outside of ourselves to identify within. Would you say that's the biggest shift? I call it the inside out. It's like instead of searching, we're remembering.
Oh, absolutely. We refer to it within Taoism, a path of Taoist rights. It's a
Mm.
transformative state, and you realize that through the great bellows, and that bellows will show you the nature of reality. And from that, it's first person, third person, no person.
Mm.
Hallelujah. Shout out to Call of Duty. You're just on the cusp of in between that. All megalomaniacs that love the digital assets of Arcadium desire, which comes from your obsession emerging with that ether and thinking that you are the virtual avatar. And in some senses, I would refer to my dear friend Tom Campbell as that is his very doctorate that would surmise that reality is virtual. And so, in some senses, that's absolutely true from all his receipts as a physicist, turning the zeros and ones into some metaphysical sort of realization that can be anchored in that knowing where you're now having a transformative moment. That's why within the book Immortality Crystallized in the Material, the rhapsody and the remedy is so much the embodiment aspect, which we refer to that center point, the primordial mother, that magnetism that is your true self, that you are forever, forever, is eclipsing, polarizing to the potential of energy within this material. It's very limited, even though there's elements of magnetism and electromagnetism and electric potential. It's diminished. It's not harnessed. It's not whole. The magnetism will always outweigh that. And ultimately, people refer to that. That is the divine feminine in such, but we refer to it as the primordial mother. When fully actualized, your true forever, forever self, everything just is at your disposal. You create as you should do. It's your nature, your default to create at will. And that becomes realized. Every thought, feeling, and emotion is now transmuted into creation.
Mm.
And it's not limited by the humanistic expression of that interplay back and forth of energy and the body, which we refer to the material. And people never get past that because they either jump to the top of the line, they get awakened to their true self, yet they can't harness the energy because they haven't put the infrastructure in. What's the easiest way to identify this from a metaphoric sort of standpoint is go and do something that's within the material state, exercise, learn something new, ride a bike, something that's autonomous and an autonomic response that is showing evidence of that magnetism would be breath,
Mm.
blood pumping, your body's ability to operate on its own accord without the participation of your personality. You are not required to be realized. That's when people go, Jifu, that sounds like a paradox. My mind is melting, because that's where you get misdirected. That's where you get corrupted and you start fragmenting things and compartmentalizing them and making them further and further away from knowing that you didn't have to leave anywhere. You didn't have to go anywhere. You didn't have to reach outside of yourself. You're not consuming the fringe benefits of your personality, which is an external stressor. It's not you. And
Mhm.
so when you realize that, the avatar is ground zero. That's where the origins of creation come from. And then you complete. And that mastered through this material is attention intention, is your spirit taking a peekaboo into the energy of the material state. You get to see in, you realize you're harnessing your potential. But to actualize that, you must use the alchemical process. You must actualize the body, where most people do not. They're always like, I'm so out there, I'm so fleeting, I'm off with my spirits, my guides, my this, my that. Show me. I'm the Pepsi challenge guy from the 80s. I'll take the Pepsi taste test with anybody. And I know personally through our own relationship, you are a mastered state. Real, recognized, real, because you can make alterations in the material from the very way you alchemize things and you imbue them. That's for real. And you get to experience that. That's an alteration that is, as you say, from a subatomic level, a DNA strand level. There's alterations that recognize the permanence of your forever, forever self, which is so diluted. When it's really diluted, it's diluted in the sense that people don't take advantage of their most valuable asset. And so what are we playing? What's the spiritual baby shit that we're playing with is energy, right? And so that energy must be mastered, and it starts with alchemizing it in the form of attention, intention. The spirit's now playing in it. It's recognizing its true self, and you realize that you're only a breath away from the permanency of the pulse. And so as you do that, you play with thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And I got a trigger, I got a trauma, bloody blah, blah. Daddy didn't give me cookies when I was 5, all that good stuff. It's all transitory, it's impermanent, and it's decayed, and it's perishable, and it will return back to its original state. That's where energy is a wave. And what people don't understand, the energy is the wave. They are permanent. They are the pulse. They are magnetic. And when you understand that, the diminished return of thoughts, feelings, and emotions are exactly as such. And so when you play with the distortion comes out as this energy created from your spirit playing with that attention, intention in the energy and the material state, which is another slower frequential state from the energy per se. We're slowing it down so we can mold it more in a distorted sense of reality. But ultimately, that energy is vibrational, frequential, and holds resonance. That resonance is where you become mastered. How long can you hold it? That's where the container comes in. That's where the mastery of the self-realized activation of the initiate, from the initiate to the seeker to the knower, is that potency. And you will show yourself this when you return to your true self, which that pulse animates everything as you lead up to the ultimate, which is the mother. Does that make sense?
I followed you completely. So I'm just going to recap what you just said in another way. So when we are self-actualizing within a frequency is when we're identifying if we're in the field of, so the source field or the God field or whatever word, divine field, meaning that field has a very specific frequency and that frequency does not alter. It is always 963 or whatever you want to call it. And then there's energy waves that are what we get to play with, if you will. And that's what we are consistently, if we're not in the stillness, our consciousness is experiencing those waves. And those waves have different frequencies, which will be our experience. So, where are we putting our consciousness? Are we in a wave? Are we in the stillness? And then once we're in the stillness, we can have the experience of expanding that frequency into a wave or into the waves, I should say, to create whatever it is through the intelligence of that frequency. And of course, we're doing this on a cellular level because within our cells is the frequency of source that, when fully turned on, we get to have the experience by bringing our consciousness there, actualizing as the self within that frequency, and then expressing that into the world. And from that place, we live what we would consider, whether you want to say heaven on earth or whatever it is, because when you are extending that frequency from that stillness or the one frequency into reality or the waves in order to create reality, it's always going to be created in the frequency of 963 because that's the original state it's coming from. But we have been taught to put our consciousness out into the waves and try to change things, and then we can't figure out why we can't stabilize in it. It's because we're going to the wrong place.
Amen to that.
Amen. And
Amen. Thank the Lord and hand the ammunition.
it's
Yeah.
that easy.
Well, it is when you activate and you burn in that alchemical infrastructure. Because without that, it's that impermanence in that transitory state. So it's a wave that is like a firecracker. I use that analogy because it pops off, it has a crescendo, and then it peaks and then it falls back into itself. That's what thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and quite frankly, the material state is. It's impermanent. You are forever, forever. You are eternal. You are immortal. You are forever, forever. When actualized, you have what you call heaven on earth. We refer to it as wu wei, effortless action, effortless effort. It's called everything is serendipitous, synchronistic, and now time. The now time is me being me as that animation. And that means that when someone asks me, well, how are you doing? My response is, it's good to be me.
Mm. Yeah, you're a pretty cool kid.
Yeah, we're vibing very well, my dear friend, because it's a different angle. What's mastered about what we're sharing as wisdom teaching for the world is that you cannot come to this realization without an experiential moment that has to be developed through your own self mastery, and your self realization will come the absolute truth, your absolute truth, no one else's. Your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. Most psychologists would dispute that because they want you to stay in the mind prison in the deluded state of separation. Because of that, there is an industry that makes it a very bold claim to empower someone to their self as whole, instead of we need to keep you trapped in the delusion and the rat in the wheel, repeatable, introspective, finite mind that is bankrupt in its nature. And it's like insanity, the definition of it, repeat the thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. That's what happens when the intellect is not activated by the intuitive. When they merge together, now you got the big brain on Brad superpower, and you go straight into the Kahuna burger and your version of the adrenaline rush that you get as John Travolta just pops one right in the chest like Uma Thurman out of Pulp Fiction. That's where the big brain on Brad came from, just so you know. This kind of weird relationship that I have with pop culture makes it so much more exciting for me to merge with this stuff and then emanate it as a whole source. But this is where you get the little quotes and
I like it. I
my
like it.
little relationship with the history of movies and where it is now just a corrupted, bankrupt state. And most celebrities want to just run and hide and pretend that they were even a celebrity because they don't meet the same resonance anymore. No one really cares. It's the old expression, I don't, you don't care because I don't mind because you don't matter. It's kind of scenario because their influence is no longer. It's been seen for what it is. The Emperor's New Clothes has revealed that that narrative was just a manipulation.
Yeah.
And as the beginning of risky business would start with, The dream is always the same. Instead of going home, I go to the neighbors. The door's open, so I go inside to see what's what. I hear the shower going, so I go upstairs. I'm looking around for the people, but no one seems to be here. And then I walk into the shower, and there's this woman, this beautiful woman. She's showering. She looks at me and says, "What are you doing here?" And I say, "I don't know. What are you doing here?" And she says, "Do you want me to leave?" And actually, it was a reverse. Tom Cruise asked her that. "Do you want me to leave?" And she goes, "No." I said, "So, do you want me to wash my back?" And then it just goes into a dialogue that I've only seen it about 2,000 times, so it's very hard to capture every little intricacy or subtlety of that particular movie. But what a banger of a movie! And quite frankly, no one expected it. And if I had a dollar for every time I said this guy's going to be a superstar, everyone's like, "This guy's a hack. Come on!" I mean, his claim to fame is like outsiders of risky business. Come on now. Now, he seems to be solely being able to hold up the movie industry by his movies alone to make up for all the downfall of all the terrible, corrupted movies that go nowhere because they're generated by some outside source, another country, another origin, and you're not feeding the pop culture. The most important part is to feed it. Um, how I went there, I have no idea. We just go there. We go there. We gotta go
Where it
there.
goes, it goes, it goes. It's all in reflection as well. So, okay, I want to go to the space of when this is embodied and we continue to, because once it's embodied, it becomes the practice, right? It becomes a way of being. So we're either in the practice or we're in the stillness, and we're going to fluctuate between the two. And, uh,
Well,
but
go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, when you activate your true forever self, it doesn't matter if you're in your mind or in your body or out of. It's that old expression, your resonance precedes you, not your reputation, but your resonance. So this is where the embodiment is that transmission, a transmutation that engulfs everything around you. It's like the super duper tsunami that is all consuming, but it has that effect of wholeness. So wherever you go, and I'm a little bit of a trickster and a prankster, and I'm cheating a little bit because I'm completely high as AF hanging out with Jules here because she's emanating this all the time, even though she's very humble in her nature. The truth is, she's on point. She's emanating that state as her very breath. And from that, when you become really mastered in the alchemy within that material of energy and the material state, it's so easy to sample that, and it's really, really powerful. So my hat's off to you, my dear friend, to you, little alchemist, you.
Well, thank you. Received in my heart and sending it right back. Right back. Um, okay. Where do you want to go? I feel like I kind of want to go into that space of the eternal because the internal, a lot of times because of our conditioning, we think that the eternal is the part of us that leaves this physical body and continues to have that experience. But we know that that storyline is changing and that the body ascends as the eternal because our body is part of the divine design. And I would love to just go into it a little bit more and just kind of get your take on that and what you see, what like when you see this happening. I don't know, just I'm just going to turn it over and let you go with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that magnetism, ultimately, we refer to it as the primordial mother. Excuse me. That, when actualized, is what we call you pass go, you collect your $200, and then it is effectively a detachment of this very limited return, which comes in the forms of thought, feeling, and emotions. And when people pass that point, there is a rite of passage that comes with it, and you ultimately will be in a place of complete numbness, a void of any expression of the humanness as you transcend into all things. And that's when you remember your forever, forever self. And that eternal, immortal self, that magnetic animation that is within everything, is when you get down with the get down. And all of a sudden, now, what will happen for an ascended master, you will realize that you cannot fight it. You cannot fight fate. Or more commonly, one of my favorite songs, is this love that I'm feeling? Is this love that I'm looking for? White Snake, shout out. Love it, love it. That's 80s hair rock. You know what I'm saying? Hair metal. So that is when you start to realize you can make alterations at will. So, most of the time I get the sobbing family member that's crying because their spouse, their grandma, their wife, their daughter is in a coma. They've been given the ultimate death knell, which is they're going to die within the next 24 hours. And for me to make alterations is now. Mm-hmm. And next minute, after speaking with their loved one for a brief second, they wake up the next day completely regulated, out of a coma, vital, and off to the races. And to this date, having been a facilitator of that now moment through my permanence as the forever, forever, I've witnessed that hundreds of times. It's like, and so when you are creating and able to alter the material state, it literally takes a fraction of a second. It's not going to be a big conjured up Harry Potter moment where you're sitting in the lotus position, calling in your spirit guides and inhaling incense and getting super high as AF. It happens now, which there's no requirement of personality. And so you will find that when you emanate the now moment, you emanate your forever, forever self, your immortal self, your eternal self, that pulse, you can animate anything at will. That means every thought, every feeling and emotion, whether it is seen as, when we look at observing the observer, we are able to realize that you create everything. And so with your thought, just notioning in the direction as something is conjured up in your mind as a contemplation, it's already been actualized. Mm-hmm. And this happens quite often when you get mastered in that. And that's the common side effect. And what happens is you cannot fight that. It becomes servitude and selflessness, which doesn't require your personality, which would in turn want to manipulate. And wants to manipulate, what am I getting out of this? What is the return on my investment? If I alter the material, what do I get out? You'll know that you have a diminished return because the personality will attempt to craft a scenario where there's a benefit, there's a reciprocal benefit, quid pro quo, something like that. I don't know where I got that from. I think it was the last person I spoke to today was talking about politics. There you go. You
oh gosh, no, not here, please.
Yeah. I'm like, really, the politics is like just a continual effective delusion.
It is.
And it's like, yeah, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm right, I'm wrong.
Talk about ultimate distraction.
Oh, it's just delusion. It's like it all comes from the same place, manipulation.
Yeah.
It all comes from the same place, a humanistic, egoic, narcissist overplaying their hand, attempting to control the masses, and they always fall short. You end up finding out their resume as something to the effect of a fallen, deficient, failed student of like Tony Robbins or some NLP or some manipulator that wants to contort the lens of reality through the language. And it's always the same way. And then you muster up that beat, which is what they would refer to as the pacing and leading, which most people are familiar with. I had a dream. There is a potency to that. And most politicians follow that lead. If they're even attempting to try and manipulate their audience, which starts with the catalyst, what are the three fundamental ingredients for a narcissist? Fear, obligation, and guilt. This is how you craft your manipulation as the puppeteer of your audience, or furthermore, an intimate relationship where you are literally abusing that person through that crafting of the lens of fear, obligation, and guilt. And the reason I mean narcissism is it seems to be popular right now. It might get a higher hit on the old algorithm, who knows? But this is part of very diminished returns from a humanistic perspective. And they're very much consumers, but they like to leech off and consume the masses. So ultimately, they will consume themselves. But if they can basically be the succubus, which is what that entity, that energy is that's feeding from their very desire, because that's the false light where they believe they're of a higher state of, well, I'm here to help people. No, you're here to manipulate people. And you'll use that lens, which is the most effective tool from a humanistic perspective is, boom, fear. I'll get your attention right now. And then, of course, the spirit falls away and the attention gets consumed within that interplay of energy and the material. And it never leaves it. And it becomes more and more heightened and you become more predictable. And furthermore, as you refer to it, that subconscious becomes controlled. You know, I just did a podcast today on face reading, which is an ancient tool. And face reading is so amazing from a Taoist perspective. We wrote the book on it. We created it because you take a macro to a micro. The body is nothing more than an oscillating expression of the universe. But you have to realize that the animation runs through every level of awareness. So the body, you can take your fingerprint to your hand, to your face, to your foot, any part of the body, and have a complete macro 40,000 foot view of what really is going on within the chemistry. And so I gave people some fundamental takeaways on how to integrate that, because what's popular right now is behavioral psychology, behavioral science, understanding the mechanisms that take place through body language. It's something I've been teaching people for years, but it's ancient. So you can read the face of somebody and get a very clear data point of reference through certain things that you do to evoke a pattern of response. And then what happens is, as an observing the observer, you take these data points, it takes about 45 seconds, and then you start reading into that. Mm-hmm. So for people that are not heightened in the sensory perception of clairvoyance, where you just instantly read the energy and you have their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state in about 10 seconds, this is a good ground zero, sort of like elementary way to start building on that by reading the expressions of the body and specifically the face that give you a real clear indicator whether someone is lying or telling the truth.
So give an example.
Okay, so when you want to start with a baseline. So to the unassuming person, whether you want to go from, let's say a family member, what I caution people is, look, let's start with the little baby steps by using family members or friends, and then you can start to get a sense of how this works, because everything has an emanated effect. It's oscillating. The body is your tuning fork. So what does that mean? It means that you can quickly mirror anything instantaneously. So when you ask someone a question, first you get a baseline. So it's unassuming. You're like, okay, what's your name? And if it's a family member, you know their name, and they'll say, oh, my name is Katie. Okay, great. And you can see that through that admission, you will observe that there are 4 or 5 points of energy emanating from their face, and it will come in shape structures of the mouth, the eyes, and then generally body language that may tilt the head. You start to realize that these are the 5 origin points. And then you can repeat that question a few more times, and then they become very set. This is what some people will call unconscious behavior, and it starts to speak through the body. So you watch the eyes, you watch the mouth, you watch the face and the head as how it tilts. Then you ascertain what those origin points are. You'll find it. It'll only take you a few seconds to go, okay, this continually happens. This is the same response. Then you ask them something that you know is a falsehood, a lie. And then you watch the expression from that. There's a very correlated fractional emanation that you can pinpoint as you observe. And people that are really bastard, they take in that information very quickly. You know, you can get as infantile as eye expressions that clearly show you whether they're accessing the past or potential future information, or they're creating something that is not even a truth. It changes the animation of the face itself. Generally speaking, when you ask someone something that is false, they will stop. They're attempting to merge the two energies together and literally freeze and have more intention and certainty than ever before, because it's a lie. It's not true. So they freeze and they will look through you where there's no animation at all, because they're literally being confronted with the fact that they're lying right there. And so when you ask them a truth, there will be a normal activation where the eyes turn to the left and they go up. That is them accessing past information of their own experiences that validates their truth. And so there's very simplistic things, some that are more mastered. But what you want to do first is to water it down to watching the points of activation that go on in the face and getting a few dry runs where you can see that this is the same response, and you see it over and again. So what happens is when you ask someone 2 or 3 questions and you're able to have them submit to your inquiry, you then take dominion over their unconscious. So that means that you can pour in whatever you choose to into the unconscious through basically the tone of your voice and how you anchor that information in through the language and the dialect. So if it's another language, if it's just you taking a sentence and a run on a sentence where you're adding ands and buts and becauses, that will create the hypnotic flow that will then you just pour everything into it, and then you start basically animating what and programming their mind to however you choose it to be. And so that would then create an anchor. So then you could, with their eyes open, hypnotize them to a specific event, program it to that time, and they will literally fall into a trance within the same second that you've programmed it, with their eyes open, with them being unassuming and not knowing that that's possible. Now, this sounds diabolical, but this is part of how these people work. And furthermore, within ancient face reading, you want to access the spirit. So between the breath in and the breath out is the permanence, where you jump off the body and your spirit is active, your Shen is active. When you pause, you create that instantaneously. That is when you hold your breath, you are now in the spirit world. You are on your way to your primordial forever self. And that's part of that conditioning. Does that make any sense at all?
It does. That was a lot to take in.
But you got it. Here's the thing with the audience. She was picking everything up and going, oh, let me make a note there and a note there. You took it all in. That's the crazy part. She was just acting like, oh, yeah, she's just having another day in the office. She was pointing everything out and already took notes. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It's fun. And then you get to reflect on it and go into the layers. I think that's one of my favorite things is exploring the layers, right? It's always just kind of that outer layer, and then being able to sit in it and bring it into the still point and letting it inform what was said, and then exploring that and getting it to a place where, well, it's in resonance, I guess. So it's not from the mind, it's the remembering. And so there's different layers of remembering until it's actualized, like everything that we've just been talking about. So now I have something to go explore, and I love that. I love having little things come in like that.
Use this other technique. So with a stranger, you can go into Starbucks, a local restaurant, coffee house, sit there, observe, find your subject, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. Because you're entering the ether, we call this the amber effect. When you start to take maestro over the substance, which is this tapestry, and as you feel the energy, as I'm playing with the Play-Doh right now, you feel that ripple through your body. This is what my parapsychologist friends refer to as psychokinesis. This is a palpability For you and I, we are creating communion, we are unifying, and that means that the biofields are tuned. This is a tuning fork. This is your barometer. If I hit that, I can have you vibrate frequentially and resonate at the same tuning fork, because the matter is the baseline, which is the body. So you can mirror and mimic anything within this material state through the body. So when you go into Starbucks, whatever, you sit there and you go, oh, who's my mark? All right. Oh, this guy over here. He's sitting there reading a book, scratching his head, he's drinking his coffee. Then you sit there and you posture yourself in the same action of his body. And instantly, within a few seconds of you holding that position, you will start to feel the respiration. The respiration, and this is a little trick that I have with my kids. They hate me doing story time, because the story time is like, oh, Dad's just going to like put me out. It's like, you know, I get my 6 kids together. It's like story time. Oh, no, Dad, I want to hear the whole story. Sure you do. You'll hear the whole story. And sure enough, the second I register with the first breath of one child, it starts to mimic all of them. And I then have maestro over the respiration, and then sleep. And everyone goes out, because it's a union that you create through that energy potential. And it happens so quickly that you fall into this state, and it creates harmony in the body. And that's why it's so euphoric, and you mimic the theta state and ultimately drop deep into delta brainwaves, because you're able to harness that. So when you're observing your mark, you look for, you know, Mr. X, he's sitting there drinking his coffee, and then you copy his mannerisms, literally right down to how he's sitting. Within 3 to 5 breaths, you'll start to mimic his respiration. You'll notice his heart beat and his heart rate and his breath are mimicking yours. And from that, then you start to realize, okay, I got you now. We are on the same frequency. Now, many people would consider this unethical. This is really up to you how you perceive it. I don't consciously do this. It was fun initially when you start mastering this, but it's not something you want to go out and puppeteer people because you're bored. Saturday afternoon, I got nothing to do. Let me go and, you know, have like half a dozen people in the coffee shop doing the same shit. It's kind of fun. It's just like, oh, connect him and connect him. And they don't even realize they're all mimicking the same reaction. Now, from a neuroplasticity level, we are functionally activating the mirror neurons that everyone has. So when you're doing this, you will literally, if you put your hand on your face and scratch your face, he'll start doing that. And the first time you do it, you will freak out, and you'll be like, I need to do 5 or 6 different postures to believe it. I'm still not 100% here. By the 5th posture, you're like, holy shit, this is really happening, because you've got no basis or corrupted state. You're just following my suggestion, and you're going, oh, well, I'm not a master alchemist. San Qing said, just go in and check out the coffee shop and do this. And that's when it becomes actualized, and it's without the thought process of, well, I need to be Harry Potter, and I need to have the moon set at a certain time, and the sun's coming in, and I've got my little fairies and crystals and everything. No, you're just following instruction on a exercise that can be implemented instantaneously. That's where people flip out. They go, it can't be this easy. Oh, yes, it is. That is the now moment. That is when you recognize your forever state, and you can puppeteer anything and everything. It's an exercise that blows people's minds, because it can't be that simple. That's another one for you, just in case you haven't tried that one.
All right. Well, that sounds like fun. The
All
things
with
we
good
do for
intention.
entertainment.
Yeah, all with good intention, but it's realizing how the now moment can create,
Yes.
you know, which is most important.
Yeah.
And in the way that you find real healing and basically altering the material, is when you return everything to whole, which that becomes your default, and your servitude and selflessness is the emanated effects of that, and you won't be able to fight it. It just is your programming, deprogramming default of who you are.
Love that. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to go to where we can find your book.
Right. Yes, it will be on my website, which is part of the link to, it's called immortaldaoistrights.com. If you want anything that is a little bit more related to your own self mastery, and I just put up the most common things that everyone asks me for, whether it's activating and imprinting a place, person, or thing, not so much a place or a person, but maybe a thing. That grid activation comes with many things, intimate one-on-one conversations with Latsu, where basically ask him anything and I will give you a transmitted experience through that dialogue. And there's many other different services that are on the website, but from that you can also access and purchase my Immortal Elixir, which is a combination of teas. Here we go, shout out to it. The gold tip, picked from Tibetan monks out of Tibet, infused with Indian rose petals, all imbued with yours truly, the essence of pure forever, forever self. And you'll feel that robust potency as, the master here, being the master of imbuing things, which is our dear friend Jules here, is very mastered at remembering who she is. This is all part of the whole experience. So you can pick up the book. Actually have 3 books. The other one is the Rhapsody crystallized within the material, which is basically the poetic fusion and the love affair that Latsu has with the material, using words as a crafting vehicle to evoke the heart. And then finally, Whispers crystallized within the material, which is a go-to A to Z on how to actualize yourself as a full-blown channeler of anything and everything as one. And you will realize you are source and be super blown away by how quickly you can access information. Other than that, having a great day. It's normal.
Oh, that's so amazing. So shout out your website one more time.
Immortality, oh, sorry, immortaldaoistrights.com.
Okay. All right. And I know you also have a podcast. Do you
The
want to
Way
do a little shout?
126 experience. I've had some incredible, amazing wisdom teachers such as yourself. And it's always a great dialogue to the monologue, which is the whole point of this. And I believe that's why you have these conversations, to help share people these epiphany remembered moments of forever, forever self.
Forever, forever self. Well, we are sending that frequency to everybody that is listening. So feel that freak. I'm just kidding. You were supposed to follow me on that.
Oh, right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Oh, and shout out to an app that I developed to help you take you from a zero to a hero. If you want to be actualized through a thought, feeling, and emotion, you're going to find that with a visual audible experience, creating a kinesthetic charge that makes you remember you are the shiznit as the now, because you'll feel like you've had 8 pina coladas and full body massage in 10 days in the Bahamas.
I love it. I love it. You have so many amazing creations and ways to play in that self-actualization. I think that's really important is that everybody has their way and they find a way, and you are the way. Not you, but you that are listening. We, I, you, everybody. It's inside of us. It's I when I can remember the exact moment that I had the turnaround of like, oh, it's me. I'm the way, and not me as the ego, but me as the frequency. So it's a powerful place, and I love that you have the step by step of having to how to return to that. Well, San, I love you. You know I love you. You're so amazing. You're so much fun. I'll have to go back and listen to this because there are so many little things where I'm like, wait, what? I have to like go back because when you're in the frequency,
Oh,
sometimes you don't really intellectualize it. You just kind of go with it.
or the humility to your audience, her humility is second to none, and the truth is you are in the presence of a wisdom teacher that is actualized, that is actually living and breathing emanation of that source. And you feel it, you don't hear it, you don't intellectualize it, you feel it. That's how you know you're right where you need to be. And that's what happens every time I merge with Jules in these incredible ancient conversations of ritual, and that selfishness to the selflessness requires that sacrifice, and that sacrifice comes in the form of anything that is constructed that is limited. And that's when we remember who we are. We are forever, forever.
Forever, forever. And we forever, forever send everyone so much love and a big hug. Thank you so much.